Good morning. We're now going to do the end of a mamar that is written in a book called Likuti Torah. Every day we've been learning pretty faithfully. We've been learning this book called Likuti Torah, but this week we divert a little because the Maimorim in Likuti Torah are pretty long about Passover. And the others that we did learn are very short and to the point. So they're a little bit more, let's say, how do I call it, practical for the Passover, which Passover is going to be just in 2 days, right? It's going to be this tomorrow night. Okay, so the Rebbe asked a question. This is a fairly longer mimer in Likuti Torah. Again, Likuti Torah is a book which was written by the first Rebbe of Chabad, Rabbi Shneur Zalman of Liadi, and he wrote this book after he was released from prison. Just 1 second. After he was released from prison, as you know, he was in prison because of his ideas, the Hasidic ideas. They thought they were revolutionary ideas. Anyway, the story we'll explain later on Yud Tet Kislev. But here we have this mimer, and it starts off. Let's see if we can get to the beginning, and then we'll jump to the end. Here it is. Oh, Sheshet Yamim Tochal Matzot. 6 days you should eat matzot. Yom Shvi Atzirat Lashem Elokecha. Right? It says, we have to understand. It says 6 days you should eat matzah, and right before that it says 7 days you should eat matzah. All right, there's many explanations. Of course, everybody notices this. And who wrote this, by the way? 6 days, and then he wrote 7 days. God himself wrote it. So why would God do a thing like that? So they say that really that all the other days are optional. The other days are optional. You don't have to eat matzah. All you have to eat matzah is just on the night of Passover. That's it. That's the commandment to eat matzah. And the rest of the time, if you don't want to eat matzah, you don't have to eat matzah. It's forbidden to eat chametz, but that's a different commandment. But if you want to, the whole Passover, you can eat potatoes or whatever you want. You don't have to eat matzah. Okay, so it says, well, also we have to understand another thing. It says 6 days you should eat matzah, and then after that, by means of eating the 6 days matzah, then it's going to be a tzeres to Hashem. Then it'll be a gathering day for God, and then the 7th day. Okay, so how does it that eating matzah makes the 7th day? What does this mean? The last day of Passover is called a gathering day for God. All right. So let's explain this. What does it exactly mean to us nowadays? We get a revelations of God. What exactly is happening here? You eat matzah, right? Judaism is based on a very basic thing, and that is what's called the revelation of God. Revealing God. In the Holy Temple, God was revealed. At Mount Sinai, God was revealed. People saw God, they felt God. After Moses went up on Mount Sinai and he didn't come back, the people stopped believing in God. Not totally, but enough, a little bit, enough so that they worshiped the golden calf. What's this thing of believing in God and revealing God? It's the first of the 10 commandments. I am God that took you out of Egypt. Don't believe in any other God. You have to believe in God. What is this? I am God, and there's to reveal God. What is exactly revealed when we reveal God? What are we supposed to feel? What are we supposed to do? It says, well, by means of eat matzah for 6 days, as that reveals God. And then you get the 7, right? I've eaten matzah a lot of times. I mean, a lot of times 6 days, I don't know if I felt God, or maybe I did, and I don't know what it means. Maybe we just don't know what it means to feel God. Maybe it's not some sort of an elevation feeling of ecstasy and your eyes just turn up or something, and you just sort of float. And everybody says, wow, he's feeling God. And so one thing of feeling God is you're happy. It makes a person happy. To feel God means you don't feel yourself. You don't feel yourself so much. When you don't feel yourself so much, then you're happy. It activates you. It doesn't neutralize you. So that's accomplished by this thing of eating matzah. So there's another question. What does it mean that it's a gathering day for God? Okay, so now he's going to ask this question, and this is the question that we're going to answer here. Right? Let's understand. One second. Also understand, what does it say that the Jewish people? We say it in the Seder, in the Haggadah, a Passover. It says that the Jewish people, they cooked the dough that they took from Egypt, and they made it matzot. They took dough out. It says they didn't have time, so they took dough out of Egypt, and when they cooked it, they baked it, it became matzah. Ugos matzos kilo chametz. So it says, again, they baked the dough that they took from Egypt, matzah kilo chametz. It didn't become chametz. Ki gorshu mitzrayim, because the Paro evicted them from Egypt. It's one of the portions of the Torah. Bashalach Paro. Paro evicted the Jews from Egypt. And they couldn't take time. They didn't take time. This seems to be the reason. And is why do we eat matzah? Because the Jews were evicted and they didn't have time to eat chametz. They would have loved to just sit around and eat cakes and things like that and celebrate, but they couldn't. They didn't have time. That seems to be the reason why that they made it matzahs and it didn't become chametz, because they were evicted from Egypt, and that's not so. Because why? It was forbidden for them to eat chametz, at least one day. Right? There's some opinions that say that only one day was forbidden for eat chametz, like it says in Pesachim. So that first day that they were evicted from Egypt, for sure they were not allowed to eat anything except for matzah. The reason they ate matzah was not because they were evicted from Egypt and they would have liked to eat chametz, but they just didn't have time. But that's not so. They didn't like to eat chametz. They didn't have the option. It was forbidden to eat chametz. Also, how could it be that the matzah, this dough, couldn't rise up? Right? Because they were driven out of Egypt. It took a long time for them to leave Egypt, and it was a warm climate. If you make matzah hayom in a matzah bakery today, and you leave the dough alone, not worked on, for a few minutes, it becomes chametz on its own. And to leave Egypt took them a long time, right? To get out of Egypt. Also, we have to understand in the Haggadah, and this is the question we're going to answer. Ready? It says in the Haggadah, this matzah we eat because the dough of our forefathers didn't have time to raise up, because God revealed himself on them, and they had to leave Egypt quickly. That's the reason that they ate matzah, was because God appeared. That's what we say in the Haggadah. God appeared to them, and therefore they didn't have time. The matzah couldn't raise up. Says the Rebbe, well, that's not the reason why we eat matzah. We were commanded that we have to eat matzah on the night going out of Passover. We were commanded. And also, what does it mean that God appeared to them? When did God appear to them? God appeared to them after midnight. God appeared after midnight to kill the firstborn. When did they eat matzah? Matzah, that was before midnight. They had, in fact, by means of eating the matzah and doing this commandment, that's what got them this revelation of God that killed the Egyptians. If matzah had to be eaten before midnight, that's why we tried to finish the Lail Seder Pesach before midnight. Also, this matzah that we're eating is we eat matzah now. We try to eat it before midnight. And when did God appear to them? Back then was after midnight. So what's going on over here? What's going on? First of all, why do we eat matzah? Because we were commanded. But that's not the reasons that's given in the Torah. The reason that is given in the Torah is, of course, it's also given. We're commanded. It's a commandment, but it's because they didn't want to eat matzah. They wanted to eat chametz, but they couldn't. They were evicted from Egypt, or because God revealed Himself to them. Both of them are not so. First of all, the matzah that we eat is before midnight, and the matzah that they ate was before midnight, and that God revealed Himself to them, and that Paro evicted them from Egypt, that was after midnight. So the Rebbe says there's two types of matzah. Gabi, if it says there's tochal matzot, it says matzot without a vav in it, matzot, and it says that the Jewish people cooked the matzot and it couldn't rise up. It was impossible to raise up because God revealed Himself to them. That it says over there, we got matzot with a vav. Why? The vav is indicating from above to below that God revealed Himself to them. Two different types of matzah. There were beit bechinas matzah. There was two types of matzahs. That it says in the evening you have to eat matzah. It says without a vav. This is before midnight. That's matzah before vav. It didn't have the revelation of God in it. The second one is matzot. This is the matzah after midnight. This has a vav in it, matzot. Both of them are pronounced the same. It's the same word, but one is written in the Torah with a vav, which indicates God revealed Himself. A vav is a line from above to below. That's after revealed Himself. God revealed Himself to them. That's the matzot they ate afterwards. If so, we got a big question. But it says the matzah that we eat is because God revealed Himself, and He revealed Himself, and the dough was not able to raise up. This is the matzot full, right? That's the matzot that's the matzot that we eat. Interestingly enough, we eat it before midnight. That should be the matzot without the vav. If so, the reason given that we're eating these matzahs because God revealed Himself. Well, He revealed after midnight. Why are we eating the matzah before midnight? So if so, it doesn't sort of make any sense. The matzah that we're eating is before or after. Okay, now let's get back to the first question. I want to jump now to this because, like I say, it's a beautiful mimer. It's long though. It's a little bit long, and we certainly won't be able to finish it now. So let's go to the answer. Here we go. Answer. All right. Now, if you remember, we learned yesterday in a mimer from the grandson of the first Rebbe of Chabad that he became the third Rebbe of Chabad, called the Tzemach Tzedek. And he wrote over there that there's a big difference between matzah and chametz. That matzah with a hay in it has a revelation of God. Little hole, and chametz doesn't have the little hole on the top of it. Okay, now we're sort of learning that there's two types of revelation of God. There's matzah without a vav. That's the revelation of God that we get when we eat matzah. That's faith. And then there's the matzah with the vav in it. And that's the matzah that they ate after midnight, after when they were leaving Egypt. And that matzah, it couldn't raise up. It couldn't raise up because remember what we said yesterday? That chametz indicates false egotism. Okay, so let's just try to explain this in sort of a simple way, if we can. And what is God? God is reality. God is reality. That's what God is, reality. God, we learned in the Bible, God creates the world. God wants the world to be here. So to speak, the world has to be here. Why? Because God wants it to be here. God is creating it. He wants it to be here. That's the Bible. It says in the Bible that there's a world. If it says in the Torah, there's a world, there must be a world, because the Torah is truth, infinite truth. So that's reality, right? Sort of. Just to feel the creation alone without feeling the creator, that's feeling half reality. That's feeling half reality. Like a marriage. A person gets married and he only thinks about himself. Well, I mean, that's part of the marriage, right? A person can get married. And sometimes marriages work that way. Sometimes it works that way. The wife has to serve the husband. She has to be subservient to him. She has to do everything that he says. If not, he beats her and something like that. And it works. It works. The marriage works that way. She's subservient, but that's not really a real marriage. I mean, there's no real love there. There's no real, that's a terrible example to the children. What reality is, the children learn that you can get what you want by violence and things like that. And there's no emotion. It's very selfish. But it works. It can work. It might work that way. But that's not really reality. Here, the world is created by God, and God wants us to feel him. So we're half of the picture, and God is the other half of the picture. Right? It's sort of turning it around, because God he's like the groom, and we're the bride. But anyway, so we can look at the world. If we look at the world in a half picture, then we don't really get the point of what the world is about. And that's supposed to be what the Jews are here for. The Jews are here to tell the world that God is the other half, if you want to call it, of the picture. In other words, God wants us to be individuals, and he wants us to use our ego, and he wants us to be separate, and he creates everybody separate, and everyone's different, and everyone has something to contribute. But we have to look at the whole entire picture. And that's what the Jews are here for. We're God's chosen people. So to speak, we're the God part of the world. Everybody else is part of the creation. We're part of the creator. That's how it's supposed to be. That's what it's supposed to be. What happens when you feel the creator? Like a marriage that works well. There's love. It's a symbiote. It's what do we call it? A harmonious relationship that we add something and the other partner adds something. Like when the Jews got out of Egypt, that was like the marriage day. King Solomon, in his book, The Song of Songs, he likens it to a marriage. And the Jews got out of Egypt. Everything was fine. We were with God, and God was with us. And we did what God wanted. God gave us what we want. And the land of Israel would be good, would be a wonderful place. The world would be a wonderful place. That's the thing of revealing God, the world. That God would be revealed in the world means that we are really who we are. It's a successful relationship. Successful relationship. And then the world is better than we could possibly imagine. And every moment becomes miraculous and interesting and full of life and love and excitement and mystery. Every moment of life, because it's God's world. That's what it means, a revelation of God. There's other revelations of God also, when it says that God smote the Egyptians and God revealed in the Holy of Holies, right? It was a specially concentrated revelation of God. And there's revelations of God we can't take. It's too much. It's too powerful. Like we learned about Nadav and Avihu, that they went in the Holy of Holies and they died. It was too much for them. That's what the Torah is here for. But nevertheless, that's the idea of the revelation of God, is the revelation of a more, what do you want to call it? A real reality. That every second becomes more real, more alive. We're more conscious of why God is creating the world and why God is creating me and you and everybody's. That's why people would go to the Holy Temple and they would come back happy. Moadim l'simcha. Okay, so this began really with Matza. Matza is a commandment, and the whole idea of the commandments, like I've said so many times before, that only the Jewish people have commandments, things that God told them directly to do, that sometimes don't make any sense. And this is one of them. By means of eating matzah, we increase our connection to God. But, says the Rebbe, there's two different types of connection to God, and that is before midnight. That's we have to do everything. And then there's after midnight with God. He's the dominant one. He does this. So let's go. Now we can answer what we said before. How can we say the matzah that we're eating now? Before midnight, Shu al shum, that it's because that the matzah could not raise up. Again, so let's just sort of, what did we say? That chametz, raising up, that's false egotism. That's when we take too much of the picture. We put too much emphasis on ourselves. What I'm going to receive, what I'm, me, I. That's called chametz. After midnight, when God revealed himself to the Jewish people, there couldn't be any chametz. The matzah couldn't raise up. It couldn't. There was no physical chametz. It could not raise up because the Jewish people physically could not become egotists. There was just too much reality revealed. Everybody knew, they saw, they felt, God is creating me. God is the boss. I'm not going against God. Right? Like you're in England, you don't drive on the right side of the road. You just don't drive on the wrong side of the road, which the wrong side of the road over there is called the right side. Just don't do it. You can if you want, but you don't. That's ridiculous. Everybody is. Everybody says so the same thing that you in the world. You don't take whatever it is. You don't stick your hand into fire. You don't do it. Why not? You can, if you want to, you can do it, but it's ridiculous. Who wants to do it? The same thing when there's a revelation of reality, you can't go against the Torah. You can't be an egotist. You can't be. It's just ridiculous. You have this opportunity to do such a wonderful thing as serving the Creator. Who's going to opt out for saying, no, I'm going to do it my way? Like saying, you want to go from America to Europe, take a plane. No, I'm doing I'm going to swim. Don't tell me what to do. Okay, if you want to, you can do it. But here you have, after midnight, God appeared to the Jewish people. When he appeared to the Jewish people, everyone felt reality. Everyone felt it's God's world. And if you do what God wants, it'll be a wonderful world. The relationship will be good. That's after midnight, when God appeared to the Jewish people after midnight. He appeared to all the Jewish people. So therefore, that's what it means. All right, so now the question is, the matzah, that the reason we give, that we eat matzah, is the reason that occurred after midnight, that God appeared to them and the matzah couldn't elevate. There couldn't be egotism after midnight. Who calls it Yisrael az b'galus Mitzrayim? All that was when the Jews were back then in Egypt. V'lo yalem Torah, they didn't have Torah and they didn't have commandments. If so, lo yabel choltam, they didn't have the ability to receive this big revelation of after midnight. The bechinas more gadol, lios behem bechinas bitol v'yira eloah, before midnight. But before midnight, what do they have? They had matzah missing the vav. Namely, this is what's called lower fear of God. You want to call it blind faith. They just did what God wanted. God is the boss. Take my word for it. They did. By means of this, then they could receive this big revelation after midnight. Before midnight, they didn't have any commandments. They didn't have any merit. They had no vessels to receive this blessing of. So therefore, they had to wait. They had to eat the matzah, do the commandments, do what God says. Then after that, when they did their part, then God did his part. After midnight, then God revealed himself. By means of this, by eating the matzah and doing what God wanted, then after midnight, there was the big revelation of God, so that there couldn't be any chametz. Then there was this big difference. What about the matzah we eat now? We eat it before midnight. Why do we give the reason? That's because God revealed himself. God revealed himself after midnight. And we eat the matzah before midnight. That's what nowadays. Says the Rebbe, I'll tell you what. After the Jewish people received the Torah and they received the commandments in Mount Sinai, namely the whole entire year, even before Passover, nowadays we have that big revelation back then. And it is we now are after midnight. We've been doing Torah and the commandments, eating matzah. They did it back then the first time That was the first time Jews did commandments, was back then. That made them into vessels to receive the revelation. But we've been doing these commandments already 3,334 years. We're drawing down since the Torah was given by means of the Torah and the commandments. So godliness has already been drawn down. The vessel's already made. So therefore, the matzah that we eat before midnight, we are able to, because of the Torah and the commandments we did the whole year, receive this revelation of the Shekhinah, which is Melech Malchei HaMelachim, that revealed himself after midnight. Okay, of course, what the Rebbe is implying over here is that something big is happening on this night when we eat matzah, and you have to sort of expect it and be ready for it. And it's not a normal type of a feeling. That in fact it's almost like not a feeling. It's a release from all your selfish feelings. I'll tell you a short story. I'll tell you a short story, and this is a short story, a very interesting story. Baal Shem Tov story. Baal Shem Tov. So that maybe this illustrates this. There was once a chassid of the Baal Shem Tov that he wanted to see Elijah the prophet. He was a young fellow. He wasn't even married yet, and he knew that it was really chutzpah. He wasn't ready to see Elijah the prophet. This was only by great holy people that can see Elijah the prophet. The Talmud starts off in Brachot. It starts off that Elijah the prophet, he revealed himself over there. I forget to who, to Rav Ashi or something. He revealed Elijah the prophet. Elijah the prophet did not really die. Elijah the prophet was like in the middle of the first temple, with 2,700 something like that years ago, and he didn't die. He went up to heaven in a chariot, it says, and he comes and he reveals himself to people. Okay, there were other people like that also. It says Rabbi Yehuda Nasi, he died. He was buried, and he used to come back every Shabbos and make kiddush for his family. How is that anyway? So Elijah the prophet, but only certain very high holy people are privy to see Elijah the prophet. But this pupil, he decided he wanted. So he went to the Baal Shem Tov and he asked the Baal Shem Tov, "Can I see the Baal? I want to see the." What do I have to do? He was certain that the Baal Shem Tov would say, "My son, you have time. Take it easy. Don't worry. The time will come. I'll tell you what." And the Baal Shem Tov said, "Oh, okay. If that's what you want, sure." He was really amazed, really. He said, "Yeah, go there's the next town. It's about a half an hour drive from your wagon. Load your wagon up with matzot," and it was right before Passover. Load your wagon up with matzot and with fish and wine and meat and other things for 7 to 8 days. Outside of Israel, Passover is 8 days. 8 days worth of food for 3 people. And don't be sparing, don't be stingy. Load it up. Go. I'll tell you where to go. Go to the next village, and there's this house, and he told them exactly where the house is. A little sort of a hut, and asked them to tell you brought food. You want to stay with them 7 to 8 days of Passover, and you'll see Elijah the prophet. Well, the people was very happy. The people was very happy. He loaded up his wagon. He went there. He knocked on the door. An old lady comes to the door. "I'm sorry, we don't have what to eat. We would love to have you." He says, "Look at this wagon. I have all the good you can possibly imagine. It's all kosher. It's from the Baal Shem Tov." Oh, they were very happy. She prepares the food, and sure enough, there he is. 8 days he spends by their house, and he goes to the synagogue and prays with the man and comes back. And every single minute of the time, he's waiting, looking to see when Elijah the prophet is going to come. He almost doesn't sleep. 8 days, nothing. Doesn't see nothing. The night of the Seder, the prayers, absolutely nothing. It goes back to the Baal Shem Tov, very disappointed. And the Baal Shem Tov said, "No, did you see him?" He said, "No, I'm sorry, I just didn't see. I guess I wasn't ready, to see, thank you for telling me to go, but I didn't see it. What can I do?" The Baal Shem Tov, "What are you talking about? Of course you saw him." He said, I don't know who it was. Maybe it was the old man or something. I didn't recognize. I don't know. So you go back now. They're changing the dishes, the pots and the pans for Passover. They're washing them and putting them away and taking out the chametz dishes for the rest of the year. Go back there, park your carriage far away from the house, creep up to the window, listen to what they're saying. Listen to what the woman says. So he goes back, and he creeps up to the window, listens, and he hears the woman saying to her husband, "Give me that pot, please. Here, take this dish, take it." She says, "Wasn't that wonderful, that young man that was here with us Passover?" And he says, "That was just fantastic. The pupils of the Baal Shem Tov, they are just so wonderful, so holy. It was such an amazing blessing to have him in our house." She says to her husband, No, I don't think that was I don't think you got my point. If you ask me, that young man, he wasn't the pupil of the Baal Shem Tov. If you ask me, that young man, he was Elijah the prophet." Suddenly the young man realized that he's Elijah the prophet, that everybody is Elijah the prophet. Elijah the prophet comes to announce the future redemption. That's every Jew has to come to announce the future redemption. Of course, there's also Elijah the prophet. There's a real Elijah the prophet that appears in the Talmud and he lived in the second temple and etc. But everybody has this spark, if you want to call it, of Elijah the prophet inside of him, and he doesn't know it. The same thing is, everybody has the revelation of God, but we just don't know it. The idea of Chassidut is to try to open it up, our minds to it a little bit. That's our part. Of course, God has to do his part also. That's the other part of the relationship. But what we're talking about is to see and feel how important this physical world is. That's the point. How every detail in this world is being created by God, and it's being created for a purpose. It's like King Solomon says he could understand the speech of the palm trees. He could understand the speech of the birds. Everything is telling us something, and it's not necessarily telling us, how to invest our money in the stock market. It's telling us how to be ourselves, who we are, and that's the thing that Matza does. Matza attaches us to the Creator, real reality. And the Creator is interested in the creation, in the world. So we feel it in the physical world, the creation. All we have to do, like the Rebbe says, just open our eyes and we can see it. And eating matzah, that's what it says, that matzah is called, that's what it says in the Zohar. It says matzah b'kadmusa. First of all, it says matzah without a vav. That's us doing the commandments. And l'ba'atar, and afterwards, matzot with a vav in it. Tosfot vav, adding a vav. And nimtza, so it comes out, this level of matzot, this is the level of the second matzah. That's the matzah they ate after they left Egypt. Because when we do the Torah and the commandments, we draw down what's called the 620 pillars of light, 613 commandments from the Torah, 7 commandments from the rabbis. It says the 620 pillars of light of Keter. That's 620 is the gematria of Keter, the crown, God's crown. God's crown in Kabbalah corresponds to God's will, God's pleasure. Shezeu atzmo inyan and nigla leim melech melech. That's what was revealed. Therefore, that's what it says. Shenimshach lahem. That was drawn to them. Bechatzot loila. That was drawn to them back then when they left Egypt at midnight. That's the matzah with the vav. Shu ate ratzon. That this is a special time when God revealed Himself. This is drawn to us now, the matzah that we eat now, even before midnight, because we eat the matzah before midnight, but it's 3,334 years after that midnight, back then. And the Rebbe says not only that back then, it's also 3,350 days after they left Egypt, they received the Torah. And so that's even a bigger revelation, and that's in our matzah now. I know mitzad yesh lanu Torah mitzvahs, we have Torah and the commandments, which this is the essence of God's will. And this, of course, is only for the Jewish people. But when the Jewish people do it, they plug the whole world into this revelation of godliness. And that's what it says in the Haggadah, matzah zoshanu ochlin, this matzah that we eat, al shumma, because of what? Di bishlomo, because biyota b'galus, when they were in exile, that they were in exile, there was klipa, there was sitra achra, there were all these forces of egotism and evil They didn't have Torah and the commandments, so therefore they were commanded to eat matzah without a vav before midnight. Right, that's the matzah without a vav, in order that they would at least have the power and the vessel, the preparation, the hachana, the preparation. And afterwards, by means of this, they would be able to receive this big revelation, which is not the case. We have already done Torah and commandments the whole entire year. And because of that, we have the power to receive this bigger level of matzah, which is after midnight. If so, Ma'inyan, why do we eat matzah? Why do we have to eat matzah before midnight? Why don't we eat matzah also after midnight, like they did back then? Our matzahs are the same level as the matzah they ate after midnight. The answer is, lo speak betzakat avotenu. What does it mean? That we eat matzah, even though we eat it before midnight. Nevertheless, ein inyan v'hamshacha rak mibechinat umedregat matzah echad bilvad. Nevertheless, we're saying that the matzah that we're eating before midnight, it doesn't just have the revelation. In other words, the ability that it prepares us to receive this big revelation, like they had back then, the preparation alone. But we get both. The matzah we eat before midnight, it prepares us for big revelations, just like their matzah they ate back then in Egypt. It prepared them. But it also contains the matzah after midnight that has in it the big revelation itself. This is the bittul v'mora gadol. This is the big, what's called fear and awe. She'll aspect that it's impossible for us to come to egotism. This is the revelation of Nigla Le'am Melech Malchei Amlach B'Chodesh Baruch Hu. That's what it means that God revealed himself and took them out. This is a revelation of Or Ein Sof, of God's infiniteness, God's infinite will, if you want to say. Shalamayla Maila, which is totally above the whole entire chain of creation of all the worlds. Shagili V'Hamshachazu, this is drawn down in our matzah that we eat before midnight also, for the reason we said before. How is it hinted at that the matzah that we eat before midnight contains both revelations, both the ability to prepare ourselves for the revelation of God and also the actual revelation itself? It's noda ki ha'hefresh bein chametz lamatzah. The difference between matzah and chametz. This is now the mimer of the Rebbe of this we learned yesterday. Is just the letter hey, namely the letter hey is milui. Shalom is also letter hey. Okay, there's what's called filling the letters. As you know, the world was created from God's letters. God created the world with his letters. He spoke, created the world. So these letters that are written in the Torah and the letters that God used to create the world, they're more real than the world. They're not letters in a book, like they're part of the world. The letters we have are part of the world, but really the world is in fact part of God's letters. So every letter that it says in the Torah are really these letters of creation. And therefore the letters contain all sorts of secrets and mysteries, and they can be brought out. The people of Kabbalah, they bring it out by using the letters in different ways. There were some people that could create people. It says that it was on one of the Amoraim, right? They could create people. It says that Rabbah created a human being. Rabbah Bora Gavra, it says, created a person. The Maharal Prague, he lived like 400 years ago, something like that. He created 500 years ago. Maharal Rav Yehuda Levi, he created a human being. Human being couldn't speak. Anyway, they did it by means of the letters. One of the tricks they do with the letters is the gematria, the numerical value. Another one of the tricks they do with numbers, there's a lot of them. Another one that they can do with letters to bring out the secrets in the letters is what's called filling up the letters. What does it mean, filling it up? Filling it up means, how do you pronounce the letter? The phonetic pronunciation, that's what's inside. For instance, the letter Yud. Yud, you see it's just a little line in the Torah. A little Yud is just a little sort of a dot, Yud. But when you pronounce it, it comes out Yud, Y is the little dot, U is a Vav, D is a Dalid. So if so, the letter itself is a little dot. The gematria of Yud is 10. But when you fill it up, so it comes out Yud, you have to put a Vav and a Dalet there. That's, Vav is 6, Dalet is 4. That's another 10. It's the same thing with the letter Hey. The letter Hey can be filled 3 ways: by an Aleph, Hey Yud, or Hey. So you can, here it says one of the ways of filling up the letter Hey is with another Hey. Hey. This is also the letter Hey. Lochi, and therefore, that's the idea of Marat Machpelah. Well, like we learned in another place, the double Hey. These 2 Heys hint at one of them is this Matza, which is the before midnight. That's Matza. If you spell the Hey and the Matza phonetically, fill it up, then you have Matzah. That indicates these 2 levels of matzah in the one matzah that we're eating now. Because that will, the filling up of a letter, this is what's concealed inside of the letter. So therefore, when we eat matzah, this Passover, and really all the Passovers, we should be aware that something which is happening that's much, 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 much greater than ourselves. Much greater than ourselves. In the same way that God took the Jews out of Egypt, where they could never do, ever, and here God took 3 million Jews out of Egypt. For sure, there's no one Jew that could do a thing like that. Right? Moses didn't do it. Moses just led them out, showed them which way God wanted them to go. But God took them out of Egypt. No one person could do it. No 20 people, even the 3 million people all together, if they all got politically armed or whatever, they couldn't do it either. It was impossible. You couldn't go out of Egypt. The army was too strong. They ruled over the whole world. Well, that revelation, that's what we get when we eat matzah. So we have to be ready for it. We have to prepare it, because after all, physically, we're out of Egypt. I mean, if there's some people that are ill, whatever, God should give you a few. It says that matzah also is the food of healing as well. So that's the idea of this revelation of God. That's the beginning of Judaism. That's the birth of Judaism. That we do, and God reacts. And sometimes God does the whole thing on his own. And when we eat matzah, that's our part. But also contained in the matzah is a matzah with a vav, and that's God's part, the big revelation that we get. And that's the whole secret of eating matzah. We get these 2 levels of matzah. Matzah without a hay, that's our preparation. And matzah with a hay, that's God's revelation. Now let's learn a sikha of the Rebbe.